Bitcoin's a race. I was walking my dog. My wife's away. So I'm just walking my dog, watching Bitcoin videos, listening to Bitcoin videos, listening and learning more about Bitcoin. I've been in Bitcoin for years. I have a large portion of my net worth in Bitcoin. I'm still learning. The future value of Bitcoin is literally priceless. You cannot put a price on owning Bitcoin and what it will be worth in the future. Let me explain what that means. What I realized today, Bitcoin is a race. People will tell you that everyone's financial journey is different. Everyone makes different amounts. Everyone has different goals, different risks, right? Or different risk profiles. And that's true. But Bitcoin matters. And it matters that you get enough Bitcoin. Right? People think that you can make a lot of money in the stock market and in real estate. And you can. You can if you take concentrated bets. But what a lot of people do is they buy the S&P 500, right? It's great over time. It outperforms the US dollar. But what they don't realize is the S&P 500 goes up because liquidity goes up. It's not like you're really outperforming long term if you buy the S&P 500. You need something that will outperform the S&P 500. Now, people feel like they're getting richer because either number goes up and they're comparing versus the US dollar, right? They're worth a little bit more year after year. Or because there are some fixed things that we buy. Like we buy a house, okay, you have a mortgage payment of $2,000. 10 years later, you probably have more money in your portfolio, but you still have that $2,000 mortgage. So it seems like you're getting richer, but if you go and try to get a new house, you're not going to be any richer anymore, right? Like it's just very difficult to actually outperform. And some people do it in real estate, but there's a time component to that. You're getting another job. Even if you offload it to someone else, then that cuts into your profits. Of course, you can get outliers. You can get good properties because it's more disjointed. But people don't understand the value of Bitcoin. People don't understand that it's a race. It's a race against time. It's a race against everyone else in the world that's starting to understand Bitcoin. For example, there are people that like Bitcoin, that understand Bitcoin, right? They start buying Bitcoin. Maybe they put a percentage of their portfolio in after they understand Bitcoin, right? They feel highly convicted, but you know, if you have $1 million, let's say only 10,000 is liquid. Well, you go buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. That's great. That's better than nothing. But is that really going to help you keep up with Bitcoin over the long term? If you're pricing your net worth in the scarcest asset in the world, you're going to become poorer with 1% Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to 2x or 3x over the next year or two. Your net worth is going to go down in Bitcoin unless you have a significant amount in assets that are going to do more than a 100% or 200% gain in the next couple of years. Your net worth is going to go down in Bitcoin. So as you become convicted, right, you want to put more and more into the market. You want to put more and more in Bitcoin. But a lot of the time it runs away from you. So you want to buy a full Bitcoin. It's really hard, even for someone worth $1 million right now. A lot of it's not liquid. Now, 6 months ago, it was much easier. A year ago, it was much easier. But now it's hard again. So every couple of years, it becomes harder and harder for you to actually win this race, to get enough Bitcoin. Now, some people already realize that there's a race going. And I say that there's a race. There are only so many winners. A lot of people just don't even realize that this race has started. They don't realize that it's a race against time to get Bitcoin and to understand Bitcoin and to get a large enough allocation to Bitcoin. I'll tell you what, Fidelity understands it. BlackRock understands it. They're trying to get 1 million Bitcoin. They're trying to buy a lot. And the thing is, it's not like everyone that's buying through Fidelity and BlackRock really have to understand Bitcoin. They can get millions of people to buy Bitcoin without them really fully understanding it. They go put it in a retirement account, or they send out an email saying, hey, we think Bitcoin should be in your portfolio. So one entity, one person can understand Bitcoin and get hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of people to buy it, which means they basically just push them down the raceway. They push them down the track. So let's say there are 1 million winners of this race. but there are 8 billion people racing. The reason I say that, there are only going to be 1-2 million people maybe that get a full Bitcoin. It's kind of an arbitrary number, right? 1 Bitcoin. But if you want to hit whole coiner status, there's only going to be 1 million or 2 million people that ever get that. Probably less than 2 million. Right now we have 1 million wallet addresses. A lot of people have multiple wallet addresses. So there are only so many people that will hit there, that will get there. But BlackRock and Fidelity can push people down the track. They can push people through the finish line without them even realizing that the race has started, because they can tell them to go buy it. They can change retirement portfolios so that way people have to buy it, right? So you're in this race. There are people being pushed down the road, pushed down the track by Fidelity, by BlackRock. The key is to get enough allocation that it makes a difference in your life. Whether that's whole coiner status, whether that's 0.5, whether that's 2 Bitcoin. The key is to get convicted as soon as possible. And a lot of people don't realize that this race has started, but they will realize it, and they'll realize it too late. They will never be able to get to a significant amount of Bitcoin. And it becomes harder and harder all the time to get there. The other amazing thing about Bitcoin is that you are buying and owning part of a fixed asset. It's a technology that's being widely adopted across the world. It's the only truly scarce thing. It's its own technology, right? What if I told you you could own 1% of the internet? This is back in the 90s. I say you can own 1% of the internet. Anything that comes through it, you own 1% of that value or that output, right? Or what if I told you now, anything that's ever built on AI, you can own 1% of? That would be nuts, right? That would be priceless to be able to own all the technology that comes through that, all the output, all the value that comes from that. That would be priceless. There'd be people that would pay their entire life's worth of value to get a hold of not even 1%, but just a fixed amount in some kind of technology that's ever expanding, ever growing in value. They would put their entire net worth into that. They would put their entire life's value. They would bet everything that that's going to happen, and that would be valuable. That's where we're at Bitcoin right now. There are entities like MicroStrategy that literally just a couple of years ago decided that they are going to accumulate Bitcoin. They own 1% of the supply. I'm not telling you you can buy 1% of the supply, but you can buy a fixed amount. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. If you get 1 Bitcoin, you're going to be one of the 1 million people that own a value, 1 Bitcoin out of 21 million Bitcoin. So you own 1/20 millionth of this network. No matter how big it grows, how much is built on it, how many nations buy it, how many countries buy it, how many sovereign wealth funds, how many retirement accounts, how many kids whose parents invest in their college accounts and they start buying Bitcoin 20 years from now, 100 years from now, when we start buying our kids Bitcoin, right? You own a percentage of that value, or you own 0.001% of that value, and it's fixed, but the US dollar value of it continues to grow exponentially. The value of the network continues to grow exponentially, just like AI or just like the internet. It's going to be foundational, and you're going to own part of that. I don't think there's anything else like that. You can't go and buy NVIDIA and know that you are going to hold that percentage of the AI market or the value of the AI market. That's taking a bet. But with Bitcoin, you know exactly what you own of the underlying technology. You can't go buy Google and understand where the internet's going to be, how much of that value you get in 50 years, but you know exactly what you're getting in Bitcoin. And there's only going to be a fixed amount of Bitcoin, so you can go swallow up. You can trade some of your ever depreciating US dollars, and you can buy a percentage of an exponential asset. You'll never lose any percentage of that asset, and it will continue to grow in value versus probably every other asset in the world. Of course, there will be some point where so many people are allocated to Bitcoin that it might become a bit of a legacy asset. It might become a bit of a boring asset. Maybe it appreciates 5% a year, 10% a year. But that's a long ways from now. This is an asset that's been around for 15 years. This is not an asset like real estate that's been around for thousands of years. This is not the stock market, which official stock markets maybe been around 150, 200 years. But before that, you could own portions of companies. This is something completely new that barely anyone understands yet. People have heard of it. They don't get it. They're not convicted enough. They haven't bought enough. They will get convicted. They will understand it later. And you will be the person that hopefully bought enough to be a sizable owner of this new technology. So I think there's a huge opportunity here. But if you wait too long, you won't get on the train, right? You will get left behind because other people that don't know as much as you just listen to BlackRock and they just put a small percentage of their net worth. Maybe someone that's worth 50 million puts a percentage of their net worth in it. And for them, that's not going to be enough. 1% is not enough. But they're going to swallow a lot of that Bitcoin away from you. That 1% of their net worth at $50 million, that's $500K. They just bought 10 Bitcoin. That stops 10 other people from buying that one Bitcoin. It pushes up the price, right? So there are people that are richer than you, that are dumber than you, that will not understand Bitcoin as much as you. But you hopefully will get convicted enough. You hopefully will be able to make enough to make a difference in your own life and be able to gain on those people that have more net worth than you now. Like right now, let's say I'm not saying to do this, but let's say you're 100% Bitcoin right now. Let's say you're worth $1 million. I realize a lot of people aren't worth that. But let's say you're 100% Bitcoin right now. You're worth $1 million. Someone that's $50 million net worth has 1% Bitcoin. They get a 10% return over the next year. Okay. They're worth $55 million. You get a 100% return. You're worth $2 million. Okay. So now instead of being worth 1/50th of what they're worth, you're now worth 1/27.5 of their worth. So instead of 1 divided by 50, it's 2 divided by 55. You're swallowing up that difference. So keep at it. Keep learning more. Keep trying to research. Keep trying to get convicted. Sometimes it's not enough just to understand Bitcoin and to buy a little bit of Bitcoin. Sometimes you need to become more convicted. You have to realize what happens in the cycles more. You have to get better at understanding Bitcoin, at being convicted. Because when it comes down to it, it's not necessarily buying Bitcoin that makes you rich. It's being convicted enough to make sure that you buy enough Bitcoin. You can buy at 16,000. You can time the bottom perfectly. But what if you're not convicted enough and you buy 1% of your portfolio at 16,000 and I come in at 24,000 and I buy 2% of my portfolio? I'm going to win. I'm going to win because I was more convicted. I got in harder. So keep that in mind. I appreciate it. A little bit of a different video here today, but I think it's important to think bigger. Think about what's actually happening in Bitcoin. Think about the scarcity. Think about what it means to own part of a fixed asset, a technology that's taking over the world, that's provably fair and consistent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. There are links to Margex underneath the video in case you want to trade, and there is a link underneath the video to HGAalgo in case you want help dollar cost averaging or trading. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.